Hey there, this is Jim from Metal Luscious, your mom's favorite band and made of metal, and you're listening to and watching Drums and Rums.
Hey all, this is Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits. Our guest is the drummer for your mom's favorite band, Metal Luscious, and made of metal. Their drummer is Jim McCourt as our guest. Before we jump into and learn more about Jim, I have my own little shameless plugs I just want to go ahead and start off with. Thanks for listening to this podcast. It really means a lot when you listen. And also, if you give ratings or review on Apple Podcasts, those are some things that sponsors look at, advertisers. So please drop us a comment. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to give us a like and follow. Drop us a comment what you liked about this episode. Again, those are important things that kind of we can grow, let other people know about the show. If you like what we're doing, hopefully others will follow as well here. So here we go. Let's welcome to the show Jim McCourt. How you doing, Jim?
Hey Paul, how are you, man?
Good, good. So again, I know the band here in South Florida. You guys, I've got a lot of questions because I know you guys are one of the most popular bands here in South Florida. Obviously with the show, Metal Luscious. I know you seem to be damn busy. Also, a lot of bands you're playing in. I want to get into that. Obviously made of metal. Playing with Joey from Anthrax, which is probably pretty freaking cool. I know there's a
Yeah,
couple there's other couple big metal icons you've also performed with or been part of shows and events and festivals too, which we could talk a little bit about that. And
for sure, yeah.
but yeah, so welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here.
Great. So all right, so before we get too far, let's kind of let's start off with where everyone says how did you start getting into drums? And it was probably a pots and pans episode, right, or something like that, right?
No, I'll tell you, I know exactly when it was. Slightly older. I remember, well, two things. I got Live After Death from Iron
Mm.
Maiden through a friend of a friend, gave it to me on vinyl. They used to put it on there. We put the needle down, rock out. And Home Sweet Home video from Motley Crue
Okay.
comes in and the fire everywhere. I was like, that's pretty awesome. So I started, that was 86. I started bothering my parents for drums. It took a couple of years, but by 88, they relented and got me a pawn shop special. So that was it. That was it.
Yeah. It's interesting how everyone gets influenced by, you know, whether it was Tommy Lee was the guy, right? Out of all the drummers during the
Yep.
'80s, I know there were probably better drummers, probably more technical and so forth. But Motley Crue put on put on uh, an experience of before things like that were even thought of because they gave you everything. And then Tommy,
Well, not even the show. The drum solo was
yeah,
it was unbelievable. I mean, there's none. There are better players for sure, but as far as a better showman, no. Once the drums started flipping upside down, I mean, that just I'm done. I'm out. That's awesome.
was so. How many more years did you have to talk your parents into getting you a rotating,
Yeah, I know. I'm still working on that. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. He just the ways he topped it every year, whether it was the roller coaster or spinning around upside down, and
yeah.
yeah,
It's
it's
amazing.
extra.
He still people remember that was in '87. He was flipping that drum set upside down.
Mhm.
That's pretty cutting edge. And it was a forklift, and it would spin around. I mean, that's how we did it. And it's still when I still see that video, it blows my mind.
What's funny is how everything always seems to, like especially the '80s, right? Everything kind of recycles. 30 years later, almost
Yeah,
40 years, right? I think we're about close to the same age, and how why nobody's come back, to everyone says the '80s were the best time period. Obviously, we're gonna talk about the bands here
yeah,
that you're
for sure.
performing and why that
Hmm.
is. But
Yep.
yeah, why is there not? It's nobody kind of think they got the balls to do things like that crazy as a drummer, or has it been played out, or I don't know.
I think it was just innovation and things. And I know there are current drummers that do some cool stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I like I said, I'm old school. So when I see a drummer like Joey Jordison, he's not rest in peace. But
Right.
he definitely took from the book of Tommy Lee with his drum solos, which is awesome. You inspire the next generation. But
Yeah. Yeah.
still there was no one doing that kind of stuff before him. Like really, there
Yeah.
wasn't.
And over the years that I talked to different drummers, right? And we're gonna get to a segment that I'm gonna ask them, obviously, some of your drummers, but I in fairness, and it's for a different reason. Like I said, how did somebody, again, that wasn't the pots and pans, or it wasn't somebody
Right.
saw Buddy Rich on the Muppet Show, or
Right.
whatever the case may be. Here is something that, like Kiss. Kiss is another good example.
Right.
They inspired people to get into playing music, and just from okay, there's arguably better, like I said, better musicians, but that's what inspired somebody, and it may not have been
The
just so
show.
much yeah,
The
yeah,
show was on,
so
and we still tell
yep,
people this. It's like, when you go see Kiss in jeans, and I like the '80s Kiss era. Don't get me wrong, but you go see Kiss in jeans and t-shirts. Okay, yeah, it's cool. But you see Kiss, you see the Star Child and the Demon and the Spaceman and the Cat. That's a whole different
yep.
experience.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for sure. So I've got a chance to see them. I didn't get a chance to see them when they're in their prime, or back in in that time period. It was more of late.
yeah,
Then I've actually taken my kids to these Kiss concert, and
yeah.
did the whole face makeup and everything.
Right.
So yeah, so it was definitely fun. So yeah, so going in, so now here we're talking about in the '80s, and influenced by what you saw. I mean, again, we always talk about how MTV doesn't exist anymore, and watching music
Correct.
videos
Right.
now it's YouTube or whatever. But
Right.
I'm sure you were just like me, Friday night video fights, and calling in,
Yeah.
for your vote for Def
Yeah.
Leppard or whoever.
Headbangers Ball too every Saturday night. We'd
Yep, yep.
Once we were old enough to go out, we went out, but we would record that every Sunday morning.
Yes.
We'd be bright eyed watching,
Yep,
Maiden and Priest, Dio, and Metallica and Megadeth, and all the bands that we grew up loving.
yeah.
And that was
So
the only
for
place you could see those videos. They
yep.
weren't playing Overkill on
Mhm.
on
Oh,
uh, at 5 o'clock at night. They were playing whatever, Bobby Brown and all that
yep.
other shit. You wanted to see the good stuff. That's when it was. It was on
That's
at
right.
midnight on Saturday night.
Daytime you saw Bobby Brown, and nighttime you saw Bobby Blitz.
Right. That's true. That's true. That's true.
So going through that, that time period, and got your drums there, and
Yeah.
did you like what was that next big step? Was it like, let's go start a band, and did you get
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
actual formal training, or
No. My training was I put my headphones, not my earbuds. I put my headphones on, and I just started playing the stuff that I thought was basic. I'd play AC/DC. There's nothing basic about Phil Rudd. Playing Back in Black, it's not. It's a feel. You grow up. You're like, oh, I can play it technically, but do you have the feel? And you kind of
right?
sink it in. But I was playing drums in my parents' garage, and had a knock on the door, and it was this little Spanish girl. She's like, "Is that you playing drums?" I said, "Yeah, that was me." She's like, "Well, my brother is moving over here from Puerto Rico. He plays guitar. You guys should start a band." I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool. Send him over." And she did. And it turns out it was my buddy Alex Rivera, who I played with my entire life until just recently when he moved up to North Georgia, where he's still playing now. But he and I played that. We started playing. I remember the first two songs we played was "Wait" from White Lion
Mhm.
and "Crazy Train" from Ozzy, because those are the riffs that we knew. And it was just he and I, and we started our first band together. It was awful, but we played our first show down the road at Atlantis Skateway, which is Skate Zone now. That's where all the
Oh my
bands used to
god.
play back in the late '80s and early '90s. I know everybody who was in a band back then. You played there, and that's what we did. And we just started pretending to be our heroes, and
Mhm.
we were into Metallica and Megadeth, and Judas Priest Painkiller was out. So we were all
Mhm.
that's what we were doing.
Yep. So that's an interesting. So you mentioned different bands here in that time frame, and I kind of I feel like I went through. So I'm going to say is I feel like I went through a very similar pattern there. That sounds like what you may have gone through. You started off maybe with a White Lion, or
For sure.
the Motley Crue, right? And
Yep.
then your interest in music or metal started to evolve, right?
Yeah.
Because White
Totally.
Lion and Megadeth are two totally different
Right.
bands and fans too, right?
Yep. And as we're listening to this, we're like, oh yeah, hey, my buddy's like, here's Leatherwolf and Pretty Boy Floyd. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then here's White Lion. I'm like, great. And then my other buddy's like, hey, here's Slayer. I'm like, oh, that's here's Rust in Peace from Megadeth. I still remember. I was talking to my buddies. We're still friends. He and I went to the Boynton Beach Mall, and we bought No Prayer for the Dying from Iron Maiden, and Rust in Peace from Megadeth on the same day. And we were just like put the cassette deck, and that led us to other things, to you know the bands that were faster and
Mm.
heavier, and
Mhm.
we love Motley Crue, we love Bon
Yeah.
Jovi, we love Def Leppard,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we love some Metallica and Megadeth and Overkill and Slayer, and bands that just that took it to the next level.
Right. Right. And again, right, there was a whole different, playing faster, louder, and
Yeah,
yeah, I was, again, like I said, I kind of very same evolution there, growing up in
yeah,
Jersey, and again, my
yeah.
always my craziest story is always that, again, I grew up in the same town as John Bon Jovi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
many years later in high school, me and my friend, back when, I actually had long hair and had more hair than I have now.
Mm. Yeah,
We were
same.
we were we were in a shop, right? And we stumbled, him and I we got our, again, we were, as what we were called, long hairs and leather denim jackets, or the dirt bags, right? And
Yep.
we were in the shop, right? And we see this guy walking in, long hair. He's got this like jacket on, and we're like, holy shit, that looks like Bobby Blitz. And sure enough, right, here's Bobby Blitz, and we go over to him, before cell phones or anything like that.
Right.
We didn't bug him for an autograph. We just went over and just hi, and you kind of said,
Sure.
hey, we're fans, and the irony was, yeah, here's talking about awkward rock and roll moment. Here's we interrupt Bobby Blitz returning movies back. This is when ShopRite and supermarkets used to rent
Yeah.
videos, right?
My
Here's he
kids don't
returning.
understand that concept either. They're like, you had to drive somewhere to find a movie, then you had to bring it back. Yeah, my kids, they think I'm making that shit up. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so everyone who was in the supermarket didn't obviously know who he was until he realized people realized, oh, he must have been somebody. And of course, you don't know who the hell this is,
Right.
but it was just kind of funny that time frame. So, but yeah, so growing up there and that, geez, I mean, some of the places you're talking about, I wasn't here in, the 80s and 90s in South Florida, but
Hmm.
I know these places that you mentioned now, it's kind of great.
Yeah.
Was that 91 when Rust in Pieces came out, or was it
Yeah.
90?
91.
So you talk about an awesome
I'm
summer or
sorry, it was
year.
90. Yes, because
Okay.
we saw Judas Priest, the Miami Arena, which is now long gone, but we
Mhm.
saw Judas Priest Painkiller with Testament and Megadeth opening, and it was fast and heavy and loud, and it. We still talk about going to that show, like, oh God, remember that? So it was good stuff. But yeah,
Pretty.
yeah, it was. Yeah.
We were so yeah, so back to back. That's why I couldn't remember was the timing, but you figure within those 2 years or two summers, you had Megadeth starting to really get commercial success and getting out there,
Yep.
and then you had the Black Album come out a year
Yeah.
later in
Which
'91.
changed
So
everything, really. I mean,
yeah,
you know, people talk about, oh, metal went out of fashion in the '90s, and I'm like Black Album, and I'm like Pantera. Yes, it it smacked some of the wingers and the warrants, down, but we still had Metallica, we still
hmm
had you know Maiden, even though they may not have, it was a lull commercially, but
right.
they were still out there doing it. Megadeth, I mean, these band Pantera, even to some extent Dream Theater. I saw Dream Theater
Oh,
that summer of '91. Their first tour down, Images
mhm.
and Words. So they were still coming out. Yeah, there was your Nirvanas and your Soundgardens, but there were other
Yeah,
bands that were still out there, you know, digging on technique.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Nirvana there, is that we all know when that time period shifted between the changing of the music style, right? That fall of
Hmm.
'91 and Nirvana comes out and Smells Like Teen Spirit and little, and
Yeah,
but yeah. So yeah, so going through again, you're kind of practicing and self-taught and just kind of just meeting people, jamming with people who you can get their hands on
yeah.
and so forth. So some of those years, what were some of the things like everything from now, back during maybe your high school or, in your 20s, what was some of those things going on there, or the scene here in South Florida?
Well, it was it. I mean, it had its moments. We were all. It's funny back then. We weren't. No one was doing cover bands or tribute bands. No one knew what that was all about. We were all trying to. You know, we were writing songs and we were playing, and there was no internet. There was no. We met people because I remember when I changed high schools. my sophomore year, and the guy came up to me and well, I'm Maiden shirt, and I goes, "Oh, you like Iron Maiden?" And we ended up playing Monkey Business from Skid Row at the talent show. And then after that, everybody knew I was a drummer, and everybody wants a drummer. So next thing
Yeah.
you know, that's how we networked. But there were lots of places to play. When you were younger and in high school, you would drag all your friends out. Oh, Jim's band's playing Friday night. Okay, come on out. But and then as you got a little bit older, once we got out of high school and in college, there were quite a few on Clematis. There was a good
Mm,
that end of block, that 500 block of Clematis. There was, we had Respectables that we would
mm,
play at. I know it's still there, but we had Spanky's used to be there. That place was amazing. Razor Crotch. There were 3, 4 places on that little block, and when we were done, we'd go across the street and see whoever. We all ended up at whoever's gig was the latest, So, but there were super fun times, and we just learned how to write songs and how to play and how to and I tell everybody being in a band is like having 5 girlfriends. You got to learn how to relate to each other and not only be a good musician, but no one wants to hang out with an asshole. You gotta
yeah.
know your shit, and you gotta be easy to work with.
Right.
So that's how we did it. That's what we did.
Cool. So let me ask you then. Yeah, it's so there was, so you'd say there was a scene, and I know, I mean, as the point of reference at the moment, some say, or there isn't really much of a scene at the moment, but there was a scene. It sounds a scene that sounded
Totally.
like here in the
Yes.
West Palm
100%.
area.
100% was. And it wasn't just here. Like, we had bands that we would play with, all the way down to Miami. We'd go to Orlando. I made great friends, and I still have in Orlando. I played in a band in the late '90s and early 2000s called Response Negative, and we were a
Mm,
heavy metal, we're a thrash band. Bobby G from Overkill. What's up, Bobby?
mm,
He played with us, so he lives in
mm,
Gardens. We all would play together, and we played, with a band called Sack. And I met Mike Rivera. He's the guy that's in Made of Metal. So we've been buddies for 20 years, you know, just because we had different bands and we're playing together.
right.
The Culture Room used to have a lot of local
Mm,
bands at the Culture Room. Greg would throw, not so much anymore sometimes, but we used to we used to make all that happen. There were tons of places to play between Orlando. I mean, we would go all over Florida. I mean,
mm,
we'd play in Jacksonville, we'd play in Tampa, we'd play in Orlando, we'd play a lot here. So there was totally a scene. Yeah.
right. Yeah, those are some of the places. I mean, I'd moved to West Palm in late '90s, moved to Jupiter in the early 2000s time frame, and then just trying to figure out the scene and places
Yeah.
and everything was West Palm was music. I mean, before even a little bit of the community here, even here in Jupiter now, obviously around a lot of tiki bars and so forth.
Yep.
But just even remember some of the bands, Kevin and I, we've talked with, a lot of the guests on the Riff and Rhythm show is in the area is like, I remember just listening to the Buzz, right? The Buzz Bake
Yeah.
Sale,
I was
right?
just gonna say the Buzz would have. Remember, they would do the local.
Mhm,
Was it a Sunday morning? I forgot what day, but they would have
yeah.
local bands come in and jam
Mhm,
acoustic in there. So yeah, in the bake sale, that was
yep.
that was a that was a thing. Yeah.
Do you believe I actually still have a Bake Sale shirt?
I I think I have one somewhere too. Yeah. And I mean, up in north in Jupiter, we used to play Swampgrass Willies all the time too.
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
we we were up there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, it's pretty interesting, again, how the evolution of some of the music. I mean, there's still obviously musicians are still there, and is it some of the same level of what it used to be? I mean, things do change over time, comes and goes.
Yeah.
And I mean, hell, like you mentioned, I was just thinking there, like Will's Pub up in Orlando,
Yeah.
still a great place. I mean,
Yeah.
hell,
It is.
at some point, and it was those early 2000s. I remember going down a couple buddies I was starting to try to jam with, and then hurricanes happened, in 04, 05. But we
Yep.
went down to Churchill's, right? And I mean, talk about
Yes.
that's a institution in itself, right?
You are not a musician in South Florida if you have never played Churchill's, for sure.
Yeah, don't let the outside scare you, But yeah, it was a pretty
Yeah.
cool venue. A lot of metal bands that have played
Yeah,
through
I
there.
we've
Yeah.
we've I played there. Probably I'd have to use 2 hands to count how many times I played there. Yeah, and I'd be like, "Oh God, Churchill's other shit," and then I go and it kick ass, and everyone's
Right.
there and they're into it, and you know they're just supportive, and they love, especially in Miami, they love their metal, so
Yeah.
they're always super cool.
So that's a good point there, right? So when we compare, or at least I still somewhat. I mean, I know, as you said, there's still a scene here. There's still some metal here.
Hmm.
but I don't feel the same. And I know it's South Florida is well, shit. You watch any sporting event, and all the fans leave, by halftime
Yeah.
anyway. But because there's so many other things to do and entertain yourself. But I sometimes don't feel like it's like I-4 seems to be like this dividing line between,
Mm,
some of the hard rock bands because a lot of
yeah.
bands may not come down further because whether maybe it's because it's a long ass drive or
Oh yeah, now
you know
definitely because I mean, getting a tour. I mean, shit, a tour bus used to be $1,000 a day. Now
right.
it's probably 3,000 a day. So unless you're even big huge bands, listen, I wish Iron Maiden would come down here every tour. Nico lives here. He's like when they don't come here, he's like, "Arr." But doesn't get much bigger than that. I just saw Metallica. They're continuing their tour next year, and they're playing in Tampa. They're not even coming down here.
Mm,
So it's a big cost for a
yeah,
huge band like Maiden or Metallica to come down.
yeah,
I mean, can't complain. We got Pantera last year. We still get bands that come down, but it's challenging living all the way down here.
right. So I didn't
But
I didn't see. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that
Yeah.
you're changing the scene. It's challenging because you and I was born in 75. So
Mhm.
I caught kind of the end of the 80s when I got into music and then in the 90s and no one heard there was no cover bands at least here.
Mhm.
That kind of started shifting around like the 2000s and now, you know, you're hard pressed to find a place that an original metal band can go and play a show, which kind of
Mm,
sucks.
right.
And listen, I I play in most of my bands that I play in right now are cover bands or tribute bands, but you know, if I did a record with again with Bobby G from Overkill. He's like, hey, I need some songs. I'm like, send me the songs to a click, and he does, and I jam them out, and off they go. So I'm always down to jam new music, original music, because it's super fun and it's
Right.
the best. It's the best high you can really get. I mean, but at the flip side, I get more people coming to see me wearing spandex than I do playing original songs. So I kind of
Hey, there
have
you
to.
go.
You
Hey,
you
you
kind
got
of have to. You kind of have to listen. Hey, everybody loves Bon Jovi, but I get almost a bigger rush if I'm playing at Churchill's to original music. So
yeah.
it's
It's a different, yeah,
kind of a
different
give
vibe.
and
Yeah.
take. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So, let me ask you. So, would you consider Bobby G? And again, we're talking about Bobby Gustafson, right?
yeah.
Right. So, do you consider his music? Would you consider the music you're creating Florida original music? There's a reason why I asked that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If he's if he calls me up and says, "Hey, I got some songs that I need to get out," you know, listen. He and I have been buddies for a million years. He could. I mean, listen, he could record a fart and be like, I need drums. I'm like, I got you. Okay, cool, whatever. Put it on a click and send it to me, and I'll do it. So yeah, it's totally
Okay.
and I always tell him the guy wakes up in the morning, he puts on his guitar, and he's like, and all this shit that he's like, oh, this kind of sucks, but here it is. I'm like, dude, that's great. So, I'm a fan, and we're buddies. So when he
Right.
when he throws a riff at me, I'm like, I'm whatever you need, dude. I'm on
All
it.
right.
So
All right. So
that's
the
what we
reason why,
did.
so here we go. So the reason why I'm
Yes.
setting you up here. So the reason why I ask is obviously, the show that Russ was on, on the other show, their Riffs
Yeah.
and Rhythms with AMOV.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, if you guys are working original music, you got an invite. You and Bobby want to come on and can the Riffs and Rhythms show and shoot the shit, talk about
Listen,
original music, and
for sure.
yeah.
He's always listen. He talks as much as I do sometimes, so he could. He's always got stuff to say. And it's funny too. He's I'm not blowing smoke. He's a buddy, but he's an originator. Like when he came out, the shit that he was doing. I mean, people talk a lot about the West Coast thrash and with
Mhm.
Slayer and Metallica and Exodus and all that stuff. I mean, other than Anthrax,
Yeah.
Overkill doesn't get the kind of
Yeah. I agree. I
juice,
agree.
especially Bob. Overkill was a killer band. They were awesome. I still remember seeing the video for "Hello from the Gutter," and I was like, man, that's awesome. And it's because of that damn riff. Bob was killer. He's still a killer player. Again, he should write more and play more.
There
With or
you go.
without me, I don't care. But again, whatever he wants to ever do, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm with you. He's
All
such an
right.
awesome player.
Yeah, well, that's how the whole music festival started right here is where, is original music, right? Like you said, there's not a
Yeah,
lot of places that bands get a
right.
chance to even play and really almost in any genre of for that matter, right? So we've got a very
Right.
interesting lineup here for the festival, and in November 23rd, we got some southern rock country kind of bands, blues rock kind of bands.
Yeah.
We got AMOV, right? Those guys are
Yeah.
performing. We got a Red Calling from Tampa. They're a band coming over from
Yeah.
Tampa. So again, we kind of tie it in. Jim is like either a guest or we've reviewed some music. And when we review the music, it's more of a what makes the song the riff or the rhythm. And I'm sure if we review some of the stuff with Bobby, then I know I'm going to lose on this one here. It's going to be more of a riff influence song that
Oh
made the
yeah,
music. You know what I mean?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it depends what kind of what I'm listening, because some things I'll
Mhm.
listen to and I'll be like, I'm always listening to the drums, but I'll listen to, or sometimes it'll be the guitar riff. Like I said,
Mhm.
if I'm listening to Overkill, I'm on the drum. I'm
Yeah.
on the riff, because the riffs are just killer. I mean, great band, but and Metallica kind of same thing, more riffs. But Lars, I know Lars takes a lot of heat. He's top notch. The things that he has played in Metallica, because I play in a Metallica tribute band every now and again too, called Whiplash. We probably do a few gigs a year, and trying to cop that kind of stuff, it's not
Mhm.
easy. But then I listen
Right.
to other stuff like, I listen to Dio. Anything by Ronnie James Dio, I'm a huge Dio fan.
Mhm.
I listen to the lyrics. I listen because he's like, it's more again, Vinny Appice. Listen, the drummers that Dio's played with: Vinny Appice, Cozy Powell, Bill
I know.
Ward. I mean, Simon Wright. Towards the end of
Yeah.
his career, I mean, they're all badass. But
Yeah.
the the lyrics, on when I'm listening to Dio, kind of pulls to me. So it depends on what I'm listening to,
Yeah.
rather
Right.
than what you know.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about then, some of the bands here there. And so what started first here? Was it Made of Metal or was it Metal Luscious?
No, it was Metal Luscious, and speaking of, has a weird Buzz connection. So remember the band One?
Oh
They
yeah,
used to be
yeah,
on
yeah.
Buzz.
Yep.
Okay,
Hmm.
so John Shula was a guitar player in One. He also used to run a club down in Gardens called the Kelsey Club. I'm not sure if it was still
Yep.
around when you were here. Okay,
Yep. Hmm.
we all used to play the Kelsey Club. That was like one of the last cool venues here.
Right. Because I remember one in Curve. Was that another band? That was.
Yes, yeah, yep, yep,
There you
yep.
go. Right.
So
Yeah.
we would all play um, the Kelsey Club, and we were definitely on the heavier side. And John liked us, and we were buddies. He's like, "Yeah, you guys can play." So we would have our metal nights, and then we'd have other nights, and so we became buddies. And then I go to LA in maybe 2008 to see Iron Maiden, and I saw at the Key Club, which is now gone, Metal School, who had turned into Steel Panther. So when I go see Metal School, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And it's just like these dudes wearing spandex and wigs, and they're playing Journey and Bon Jovi and Motley. I'm like, this is kick ass. So I come home and I get a call from John, maybe not even a couple months later. He says, "Hey, you ever heard of a band called Metal School?" I was like, "Yeah, I was just in LA and saw him." He goes, "We should do that here." I'm like, "Yeah, all right, cool." So we got together and jammed. And at that time, he had the Mojo Room, which was up in
Mhm.
Port St. Lucie. And that's where I met Russ the first time. And we had a bass player called Gary Nutt, who was in Cinderella for a brief little bit. And we played. It was 4th of July weekend, 2008. And it was a blast. We had a great time. I was like, oh, this is fun. The place was packed. So like, oh, should we do it again? All right, cool, maybe. And we just kind of kept on going. And I mean, Russ and I are still the only constant members, but uh, you know, that's just kind of how we did. And then, funny enough, maybe a year or two later, Metal School becomes Steel Panther. They start writing their own songs. They're a big, huge band. So I'm like, holy shit, how funny is that? So
Now you
that's
own the space.
I yeah. So, and again, I know there's other bands doing what we're doing now, and listen, it
Yeah.
doesn't
Right.
bother me in the slightest. It's I think there's plenty of room for everyone, especially because it's funny that the '80s are more popular. And again, we've been doing this 14 years already, in just this band,
Right.
with Russ and I. So, um, we there's plenty to choose from, and you know the demand is still there,
Yeah.
because people want to come and they want to, and I had other guys like, oh, we should do a '90s band, and I'm like, well, nothing against those bands because they're killer. I mean, Soundgarden and
Yeah.
I mean, Alice in Chains are still out there killing it. They're awesome.
Yep.
But my thing is, I always say to this: when you go to an '80s show, it's a party. Every
Yep.
song's about party. It's a party. If you're
Yep.
not shaking
Yep.
your ass or tapping your foot, and then we say, hey, listen, there's going to be dudes at our shows because there's tons of chicks at our shows still. So we're like, okay, cool.
It's a
So
win-win,
yeah,
right?
it's kind of a different vibe with the '90s stuff. Again,
Yeah.
That's just kind of how our mentality was. And again,
Right.
we're still doing this 14 years later, the same band. People still want to hear, all these tunes that we're doing. And I give it to Russ too. He's such a killer frontman. He really is. He's one of my best buddies, and I love him and I hate him at the same time. And we're brothers and we get at it. But, at the end of the day, we kind of care about what the other one's up to. And he definitely is, well, I might be, the backbone. He's definitely steering the ship. You know what I mean? Because there's not a lot of guys who can go up there, and we play a long time. We don't just get up there and do a 90-minute set. You go see Completely Unchained, and I love them, and Eugene is amazing. But they get up there, they kill it for 90 minutes, and then they're done. You know what I'm saying? We get up there, we do, we'll play all night. And Russ, he does it. I don't know how he keeps it together, but he does. So,
Wow.
But yes, it's a blast. It's the best times, and we get to bring out, I like big drums. All my heroes play big drums. I still like big drums. I mean, is it a lot? Is it too much? Yeah, but you know what? You don't want to go see someone playing, Europe on a 4-piece drum kit. You know what I mean? I got to have too many cymbals and a big, huge drum rack and, two 24 by 20 inch kick drums.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm making fun, but I'm that's what I want to see. Like, I still love seeing big drums. I still like going to a show.
Can you imagine like a Rush tribute band and the guy shows up in a small little 4-piece kit and you're like, I know, yes, there's always the argument saying, well, the less drums, means you can do, you're more creative or whatever, do with more with less.
No way.
But again, to your point, one is, I don't think I've ever seen a Rush tribute band because nobody once got the balls to go and try to emulate,
I mean, I got to tell you, it's untouchable. Neil Peart he's the man. Like there's him and Bonham. They're the top of the pyramid. There's none. There's other amazing drummers for sure, but they're it.
Right.
And Neil hit everything on that drum kit. You know what I mean? So
what is the range there for Metal Luscious, the genre? Anything within the 80s, or you just kind of, is there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do. We love Van Halen, obviously, so we'll cheat. We'll wiggle a little bit. We'll do some early Van Halen, even though technically it was like the late 70s.
Right.
We do some Journey only because it's like the highlight. I mean, it's kind of as far out as we go. I mean, it still fits the genre. It still fits, and people still when we normally have Don't Stop and Separate Ways in the set just as staples, and it's just everybody always loves it. There's other tunes from Journey I'd love to do. We faithfully every now and again, and I mean, just talking to our keyboard player, he was in a Journey band, many moons ago. I'm like, I want to do Be Good to Yourself. No one's gonna know but us. I'm like, I don't care. I love it. I just want to, there's so many other killer Journey tracks, but so that we kind of, that's as far out of the box as we go. We try to keep it, to where there's tunes that everybody's going to know. Like I said, your Bon Jovi's, your Motley, your Guns N' Roses, your Poisons, White Snake. We can slide some Tesla in, and and some Quiet Riot, and some Scorpions and some Cinderella. But we try not to go too deep with Metal Luscious. We want everybody to like, oh, hey, I know that song.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a sense of. Yeah, I mean, again, you're there to give people what they want and what they came for, a good time, and if you're playing a lot of songs that nobody knows, even if it's for a lot of the same bands that they enjoy, it's like who's enjoying it more. I mean, as musicians, right? That's the push and pull is, I'm performing, what I want, but again, in this sense, yeah, you guys are performing. You enjoy playing, but you're
yeah. And I think that really kind of shines through. And that's one thing that, like, I have people come up to us after the show, and I always ask people if they've seen us before, and I get a lot of, oh, you guys are great. I get a lot of people telling me that you guys look like you're having a blast. And that kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You don't want to play with an asshole. You do want to be having a great time. And if you're up there really enjoying it, that kind of vibe, it catches, and people are like, oh,
Right.
I love this. You don't go up there and see a band staring at the floor, and oh, I mean, I know some bands aren't going to call for running around and twirling your guitar up and this that and the other, but it's still, you know,
Yeah,
we
that'd be
try
a
to
little
play every
odd for
show.
yeah, it'd be a little odd for like a Paul Simon tribute band, and and
Right,
you're doing shit like
right,
that.
right. He's not setting his guitar on fire and smashing
Yeah.
the drummer over the head with it, right?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
this could work actually. This could be
yeah,
totally a different twist on, Jimi Hendrix meets Paul Simon
right.
music,
That's
right?
right.
For sure. So
Hmm.
so the other band there, Made of Metal, there's your Dokken tribute band.
So
Right.
the deal with
Yeah.
Made of Metal is, back in when Ronnie James Dio passed away in 2010, Mike, and this was right around the time I was just getting on Facebook. This was like,
Mm.
I think it was a little MySpace action or whatever. Again, Mike Rivera, it's his band. He put together a Dio tribute. It was supposed to be a one-off, and they did a show at the Culture Room. And for some reason, I didn't see it until after it happened. So I'm at Rock and Roll Ribs, maybe a month or two later, and I see Mike, and I'm like, dude. He's like, hey man. I was like, fuck you. He's like, what'd I do? I'm like, you did a Dio tribute without me. The drummer that he used is one of my best buds. A guy called Steve. He's killer drummer, but still, I was like, why did you call me? So he was, well, funny enough, I kind of have this idea that I want to do a tribute show to all the bands that we love. We'll just do a one show and then we'll move on to the next. And I was like, all right, cool. So the next show, my first show that we did with them was we did a Judas Priest. So, you
Mm.
know, I the way I kind of explain this to everybody is before I got a drum set, my parents gave me drumsticks, hoping that would appease me. Right. And I would sit on the edge of my bed with my drumsticks and my stereo, so Made of Metal is an extension of that. Whatever bands we love, hey, let's do Maiden, let's do Dio, let's do Judas Priest. I mean, we've done Whitesnake, we've done Scorpions, we've done Suicidal Tendencies. We'll do one show. We pick the songs that we like to hear, and we just kind of go for it. And we started doing that. Like I said, my first show was 2011, and
Wow. Okay.
we
Yeah.
we still do it. We do 4 shows a year. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of practice, but there's also like, when else are you going to go see a band play King Diamond? You're fucking not. You're going to come see Made of Metal. Two Halloweens ago, we did a King Diamond show, and it was amazing. And it was like, Mickey D, one of my favorite drummers. We were like, we picked the bands that we love to hear. And again, it probably wouldn't sustain itself for more than one show.
Mhm.
You're not gonna go see a King Diamond tribute band more than two times. So, we picked all the tunes that we grew up and the bands that we grew up loving, and that
Mhm.
kind of, we just kept doing it. And for some reason, it caught, and people, we'll play at Piper's down south, and it'll pack out. I mean, we've got our next one coming up is actually a double header. It's Made of Metal Luscious. We're doing Metal Luscious is
Mm.
opening, and we're doing a tribute to W.A.S.P with Made of Metal right before Halloween on October 19th,
Wow.
my birthday show. So that Made of Metal is we do one gig. I mean, every now and again, if we get another gig, hey, Orlando wants we've gone to Orlando a few times and played it, but
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I
that's kind
no,
of
I think that's smart because, again, like you said, this is the problem with the area is certain bands can't play in the same town for a certain period of time because a venue may not want to
right,
oversaturate and so forth. But that's
right,
smart to kind of switch it up and say, hey, all right, maybe that's just it. You're following the band and you never know what the next set is gonna or show is gonna be
right.
covering,
And
which is
and
cool.
you brought up Dokken. We've done Dokken a few times. Mike is George Lynch's that's Mike's guy. That's what got hit the guitar in his hands, and we've done a few, and it's just super fun. I mean, we did last Dokken show we did all of Tooth and Nail because it was the anniversary, and it was just like, we get to play tunes that we normally wouldn't, get to do, and we kind of branch it out. We've revisited a few things that we all love, but and then as the well, you know, all the guys in Made of Metal are now playing with Nico and Titanium Tart. So there goes me playing Iron Maiden songs anymore. I was like, oh shit, man, really? So that that
Yes,
that
somebody's got the covered.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Nico's like, hey, you can set my drums up. I was like, all right, cool, I'll help you out. So
Yeah, yeah.
you know, um, so and that just goes to, what amazing players those dudes are. I mean, they're my band and I'm proud of them, and they just, you know, they really.
So recently, you played with Joey from Anthrax, right? So how did that even come about?
So he was down here last year with his Journey band, Beyond Frontiers. They're super good. We went to see them at Piper's. It was so amazingly cool. And I had gotten word through mutual friends that he was gonna want to do a Dio tribute. And I was like, well, if he needs a drummer, I mean, he needs a band. I got him, whatever. So uh, a year passes by, and we're at Rock and Roll Ribs this past year, and Joey came down because he and Nico are buddies, and we just started chatting and we started talking about music and bands and Dio. And I said, you got some guys for that? And he goes, I don't know, I don't really. I thought I did, but I don't think I do now. I'm like, well, you do now. So and I just clobbered him over the head with my phone. I'm like, here's us playing Holy Diver, and he's like, okay, get off me. So and then we that was in December, and then he's like, yeah, whatever. And I texted him and harassed him. And listen, I texted his wife. She's the boss. I texted Krista. I was like, Krista, we're gonna do some Dio. She's like, okay, cool. So yeah, and then he came down the following month for a charity thing that he was doing, and we again kidnapped him and brought him to a studio, and we jammed a bunch of Dio songs. And he's like, okay, I think we can do this. And that was that.
Very cool. Very cool. That's interesting is, and again, for those that, that may be listening or watching that, you know, it may not know, again, I'd be surprised, but let's play devil's advocate here. May not know who Anthrax is or Joey is. Joey is an amazing singer, right? And again, for doing this for over 40 years plus, and to go through and, I know I'm not going to kind of put him versus the others, that have, been in Anthrax who sing it.
Sure.
But Joey is my favorite. I mean, maybe some of it's because he's a OG, but just listening to him sing on
I
like
mean,
some of the songs and the range. And look, right, you tell me if I'm wrong. Again, this is probably the best person for me to ask this question to is you have an 80s tribute band, obviously the tributing all the great 80s
yeah,
music, like you said, Bon Jovi, all those hair metal bands of back in the day, amazing singers, the range that they had, but now that they've gotten older, they can't sustain that same range anymore.
yeah,
Most of them, right? But
yeah.
Joey's still there, right?
Listen, we had a real, I mean, a quick conversation about tuning. A lot of these guys, they'll tune down now. Joey's like, nope, we're doing that shit in the original key. And Mike was like, damn right we are. So they're purists. They're like, hell yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, listen, I
yeah,
mean, uh, you know, I'm not talking shit about anybody, but Metal Luscious, we tuned down a half a step just because it's so long and so, I
yeah.
mean, it's
Right,
to get up there
right.
and play, like, it's a long time. But, um, I mean, he's impressive. I mean, just if I just knew him about Anthrax, okay, cool, whatever. But he is into everything from Cheap Trick to Journey to, like, he's like, I know that song, and he kills it. He's a fantastic singer. And I was telling someone that I get to pay tribute to one of my favorite singers with another one of my favorite singers. It was super fun, and we would look at each other a couple of times. Me and Mike would be like, yeah, this is pretty cool, So, um, but he's got it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's still got that. He's got his voice still holds up,
Mhm.
still sounds great. Um, I mean, if you close your eyes, you don't. He still, even with the Anthrax songs,
Yeah.
he's rocking that shit.
So, Jim, did you ever get a chance to meet uh Ronnie?
I did. I
Okay.
met him a couple times. I met him one time in um, after one of the shows. There was a club in Boynton Beach called Orbit. It was there and gone, but I remember seeing a few shows there. I saw Ronnie there. Slayer played there. I saw Sabotage there.
Wow.
I want to say so. It was like an old Publix that they made it. I met him after the show. Um, Super nice. I was the last in line. I told everybody that. And then, we talked and chatted. And then God, more than a few years, that would have been 2001. And then when I was in LA seeing Iron Maiden, backstage at the Forum, and I meet him again, and we there chit chatting, and I said, I met you one time. I said in Florida. He goes at Orbit. I'm like, holy shit! So he remembered. He remembered, the show, and he remembered
Wow,
meeting me. Yeah. So he was a very very
that's
very nice
cool.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. There's another amazing performer. Yeah, so I can definitely see. Yeah, yeah, he was another level too. Ronnie James Dio. So
I mean, it's I I saw a couple of people, and Joey had gone out with, you know, uh, Ronnie's wife, Wendy Dio, still manages his affairs, and they have a band called Dio's Disciples that they do with some of the guys that were in the Dio band. So Wendy knew that we were doing this, and she gave Joey his blessing. But I tell you what, I was at Megadeth a few weeks ago, and a guy was sitting in front of me, and he kind of turned around and looked. We were up in the front. We had really good seats. And he turned around and he goes, "Hey, did I just see you play with Joey Belladonna at Piper's?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he shook my hand and he's like, "Ronnie would be super proud." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So that maybe that
it's
that that gave me the feels inside and that's all I want. I just
yeah.
we love these tunes and we want to keep it going. And again, where else are you going to hear Joey Belladonna singing all these awesome, not only Dio songs but Sabbath songs, from the Dio era and Rainbow. So it was a super cool experience. And the four shows that we did a little, our little get to know you four show Florida mini tour, and it was awesome. The shows were all packed, and each show was better. I mean, at four shows, we were all like, "Oh shit, we're going home. We should do four more." So
That's very. I now that
yeah.
now my 50-year-old memory is starting to come back to me. We're talking through these things and so forth, and now I remember uh, jamming or whether it's audition or whatever it was with guys at this studio in downtown West Palm in the warehouse district. I'm trying to blank on the studio, but anyway, so
Hmm.
they were again. Now this is maybe 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Um, they were working on a Dio tribute band.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
damn, I wish I can remember,
I don't
but
know that it ever. I don't ever remember anybody other. I mean, I know there are bands, especially now, that are playing Dio songs, but
yeah,
like I don't ever remember a full-on
yeah,
Dio tribute
no,
before
yeah, because I
we
just
did it. Yeah.
remember it was like it was all the songs that I had to practice or to rehearse was all Dio stuff, right? And again, I mean
Yeah.
like Dio stuff. I mean hell, even you know, I don't know. So, but yeah, now damn, I wish I could remember at least a name or something. We could have been
Yeah,
like
Vinny
Small World.
Appice's no joke. I mean,
No,
all,
I
all the
know.
players are always killer. Vivian Campbell, obviously, Craig Goldie are super
Yeah.
amazing players, but Vinny was there for most of it, and he still he does a podcast every Tuesday from his. He's got a drum set
Okay.
up in his garage, and he'll just play for an hour, take some questions, and be like, okay,
That's
cool.
cool. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much has changed. That's just somebody, our last guest was Chris from Red Calling, the band here. It's going to
Hmm.
be at this festival. And
Yep.
he was going through it. And when I was like, hey, is any of the artists who are performing at the festival, does the drummers want to have their own show, right? And where
Yeah.
the Drums and Rums show, and again, a good tie
Yeah.
crossover
It's a great
podcast.
idea. Yeah.
And so Jessica, the singer for Red Calling, had asked, just like, "Hey, you interested in this drums and rums?" And Chris is like, "Yeah, I've already checked it out." He goes, "Okay." He's reading through the list. He goes, "Oh, okay, Dom Farmolero, and all these names." He's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, these are some pretty cool." So
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, no, it's definitely yeah, we're good. Just really cool is that a lot of walking back memory lane here in West Palm or the
Yep.
80s and so
Yeah.
forth. So all right, so let's talk about this big drum kit again. If you're doing 80s stuff, you've got to have the kit. You got to have double bass. You got to have crazy all the
Yeah.
stuff you said. So all right, so you've got double kick, right? Two separate bass drums, not two pedal or
Yeah.
a single pedal.
Yeah.
Um,
Two separates.
and you've got so you got three, four. What's the rest of the configuration there?
So I've got two 24 by 20 deep kick drums. Um, and I have I know, a 10, 12, I'm sorry, a 12, 13, 14, 15 rack toms. The 14 and the 15, I don't, they're
They're just
nightstands.
they're
Yeah,
they're
I
just
don't,
there, right?
I even normally bring them out. And then a 16, 18 floor tom. So I have, um, stands and all.
Mhm.
But I had my buddy Steve, who had a rehearsal studio in Boynton Beach for a short time. Not there anymore. I walked in. He had this awesome drum rack. I was like, this is crazy. I'm like, is that a Falcon drum rack? He's like, yeah, you know. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. So everything like mounts on it. You know what I mean? Like all like Tommy Aldridge and Nick Menza. Nico had one for a bit too. I was like, oh, I said, listen, I hope you stay in amazing health, but if you ever die, leave that shit to me in your will. Right? So he laughs. He's like, okay, cool, whatever. And then, as chance would have, a couple months later,
when did you get the rack?
so yeah, so a couple months later, he calls me up. He goes, "Listen, man, I'm close up shop here. I gotta get rid of this rack." I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah!" So I take the rack. Funny enough, used to belong to Phil Verone from Saigon Kick. That's who the rack was made for.
That's
So
cool.
I'm like, okay, cool. So I have this rack, and it's big and clunky and crazy. It's its own drum riser. If you have a drum riser, I put it on the riser. It's all well and good. If it doesn't have a drum riser, it's got stilts, so it's up on drummer. So I have this big, gigantic drum rack. I mean, I use it for Maiden metal sometimes, but typically it's a Metal Luscious thing because it's supposed to be obnoxiously big.
Right.
So, but yeah, so that's my basic configuration. If I'm doing a show like that, even with Maiden metal without the rack, is 2 kick drums, the snare, 2 racks in either a floor or 2 floors, depending on how much room I have. A lot of times the 18 is expendable if I don't have enough room. Although I played it with in-ear monitors, so I don't normally need a wedge, so that gives me a little bit more room. But
got it.
And big drums, I like big drums. All my guys, Tommy Lee, Mickey D, Nico, Tommy Aldridge, Scott Travis. They weren't all had short toms. They had Nico's square size, 6 through 16 toms, and they're all square sizes, and they're big. And I just always liked how it sounded when you're playing the drums. When you're just playing, the toms are like singing, everything's like moving, and like it's a vibe. And I still feel that way. I want bigger the better.
Right. So what kind of what are you Zildjian, Sabian guy, Paiste?
Yeah, Paiste again. Bonham, Tommy Lee, Nico, Mickey D, you go with what you know. I mean, they're all amazing, but Paiste just always had that, like an orchestra. It's like I have an orchestra of drum. I have an orchestra of cymbals. It's just, Paiste always did it for me, always.
I had a cymbal maker on here, American guy, independent guy, Nicky Moon. He's it's interesting to be talking and making cymbals, and he trained under other people, and some of the stuff he was making was kind of really interesting. And but yeah, there's so many that those are just like the mass commercialized. Some of the bigger names
used to be just 3. Yeah,
right.
Zildjian, Sabian, Paiste. That was it. And now there's a whole lot of other.
Yeah, a lot
which is good for the marketplace. It's good for us,
right? So that was So Chris, like I said, the past guest he's the North American operations for Domine. I think it's a company out of Asia that he's the North American guy. So he's offered to bring cymbals to the festival for others to do. You don't have to bring your own stuff. And so I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah. That's a great opportunity. So
funny. I used to be like, no, I want to play my shit. Now, if there's a drum kit, I'm like, I'll play that. And thank you very much. No problem. I'll bring my seat and I'll bring my snare and I'll bring my pedals. I'll leave the pedals on. My 49-year-old back is like, nope, I don't want to move drums today. I'm good to go. Thank you very much.
That's what I found fascinating being in Nashville is seeing the drum, bands move from place to place. Is like they walk in, there's a good house kit. Again, this is Nashville, right?
Yep.
Pedals, cymbals, your snare, and then that's it, right? And
perfect.
I don't even think they even put the washers and wing nuts on top of the cymbals just because
I'll take it
quick on and off, right? So
that's
for
right.
sure. So all right, so Jim, I know we talked a lot about a lot of drum stuff here, a lot of great music memories, a lot of great music. So this is a segment here. This was not part of the questionnaire, so this is a segment we've got. It's a rapid fire segment called "In 4 Beats or Less." All right, so I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you're going to try to see how in 4 beats or less you don't overthink stuff. All right, so all right, here we go. So in 4 beats or less, who's on your Mount Rushmore of drummers?
Nico, Vinny Appice, Tommy Lee, John Bonham.
Okay. All right. So a couple new names on there. Okay, that I've gotten before. Okay, some obviously you could probably figure some have already been mentioned.
Bonham's got to be on everybody's, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You can't leave him out. Yeah.
All right. So in 4 beats or less, Again, I know again, you got a big tie in there with Pipers. I know you perform there a
Hmm.
lot, and Greg and everything.
Yep.
So you'll see a lot of bands that come through, younger kids and so forth. So what's one piece of advice you would give young drummers?
Play a lot and
Mm,
play with other people. Play a lot and play with a lot of people.
okay. Yep. So yeah, you're not going to get better. You're not going to get if you don't get out there and just do it, right? That's I think the
Yep.
big thing.
It's
Yep.
true.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So in 4 beats or less, so I know you mentioned you name drop MySpace, so I know it sounds like you're a big social media guy. Um, so in 4 beats or less, what social media drummer do you follow or aware of?
You know, um, I don't know that he would be considered a social media drummer, and he's a buddy, but I'll drop him anyway. Shane Kenny from from Drum Center of Portsmouth. If I need to think what kind of I want to hear what this snare drum sounds like, I'll type it in, and he'll be up there, or somebody in his staff up there playing it, and that always he gets my business too. But I'm like, what does this old drum sound like? And there he'll be playing it, and I think he changed how drums are sold and how drums are
Mm,
consumed online because we can see it now, and that always blows me
yeah.
away. But I mean,
Okay.
there's so many. I mean, all these guys from Brazil that are up there with one hand drinking coffee, doing blast
Yeah.
beats. I mean, they're all they. I get people send me, "Oh, have you seen this?" I mean, it blows me
I
away.
know. I know, right? You're like, yeah,
Yep.
I think it's Estelpario, right? Or so, yeah,
Yeah.
he says, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, check out this guy. Yeah, I know.
Yep.
Already, yeah. I'm like, it's like,
Yep.
don't you think I wouldn't already know this guy?
I
Like,
know. And I mean, shout out to everybody at Drumeo. I mean,
mm, yeah,
I mean, everybody I've ever loved almost, they're at Drumeo. And
I know.
whenever I see like, oh, Tommy Aldridge did a Drumeo, I'm like, clear my calendar. I want to watch whatever Tommy Aldridge is doing. Thank you very much. And then it's just
It was amazing talking to Jared. And just again, one is Jared. Again, it was one of those. I'm a fan. I know of him, right? And I'm like,
yeah,
shit. Thanks for doing my podcast. I'm this little podcast, and you are Jared. And but yeah, so it's just amazing seeing who
yeah.
different people he has on. So all right, so the last question here, 4 beats or less. I know you've got a good one here for this answer. So 4 beats or less, the craziest thing that happened at a gig.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go way back. I already name dropped Atlantis Skateway. I'll go way back to Atlantis Skateway. My pawn shop special drum set, which I had gotten another kick drum for, which is the same rock configuration. I had two kick drums, two rack toms on the floor, and the lighting rig, the lighting rig was pretty much held together in the old school uh, ceiling, and we had to push the drum riser back a little bit because the cable wouldn't fit for our PA, and we are playing "For Whom the Bell Tolls" by Metallica, and one of the because we didn't have enough songs, we had to add a cover. One end of the lighting rig came swinging down and took my drums and my toms, and again, I keep people for a long time. So one of my buddies was like, "Hey, remember that time we were playing Metallica and the lighting rig almost killed you?" I'm like, "Yeah." So that's way back to the beginning. That was like my second or third show. I still, you know, I still remember that and think, glad I didn't die that day.
Definitely almost a Spinal Tap moment there, especially drummer
Yeah,
related, right? Yeah, the drummers always die, right? So all
yeah,
right, well,
that's
very
true.
cool.
Always.
Yeah, so no, that's a good kind of crazy story. So, yeah, so no, I appreciate Jim, coming on the show here. So, all right, so here in closing here is like, what do you got to plug? What do you got to let people know? Gigs coming up. What do you want people to check out?
Okay,
I know
so yeah, I mean,
you mentioned like a big one here is could be coming up in December every year. Down at Rock and Ribs. If you want to, whatever you're gonna go promote.
well,
Yeah.
okay, so Rock and Roll Ribs will not be happening this year in December, sadly. Nico's out on the road, so when he comes back, I mean, he comes back maybe the second week in December,
Mm.
and that we would have it the second Saturday. So we are working on hopefully rescheduling. I mean, we're all pushing for January, but I mean, it's up. He's the boss, so whatever he wants to do, we're gonna make it happen.
Okay.
We got a bunch of Metal Luscious shows. We're at Hiram's on Saturday. If you want to come up and see us at Captain Hiram's and
Yeah.
Sebastian, The weekend after that, we're, I believe, at Gillespie's down in Pompano. And then we've got Made of Metals doing our Metal Luscious, Made of Metal Luscious show. We're doing Metal Luscious, and then we're doing W.A.S.P. So if you like, you know, some awesome W.A.S.P. songs, come see that. And then
When is that one?
that is Saturday, October the 19th. That's at
Okay.
Piper's.
Okay. Cool.
And then, next year, hopefully we'll be doing some more, Bella Dio shows, as we like to call it lovingly. And, I'm sure there'll be some titanium tart shows with the guys
Mm.
playing with Nico also. So we're all, we're around, we're all over, Facebook, Made of Metal, Metal Luscious. Find me, I'm on there too. So we try to keep busy.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, cool. So, all right. So we'll include all the couple of links that you had sent over
Yeah,
there, your
totally.
YouTube stuff, and yeah, for sure. So, yeah, no, definitely, yeah, for sure. So I can't, yeah, can't wait to, and like I said, I know, right, we've known each other, or maybe I know you
Yeah.
more than you know me, but again, through Russ, I appreciate, Russ,
Yeah, of course.
for hooking us up here in this episode here, and then definitely check out, those guys as well. It's definitely cool crossover concept we've been doing with the two podcasts now that we're running
Yeah, it's
into
very
this
cool.
network. Yeah. So I'd like to thank Jim for coming on the podcast, talking about drums, music, life, and so check out Drums and Rums podcast, give it a like and follow. Lots of other great episodes are out there. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all the socials, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Check out drumsandrums.com. Check out our other sister shows, Riffs and Rhythms, Jams and Cocktails as well, all part of the new podcast network that we've been building called B3 Podcast Network. And yeah, man. So thank you all for having a great day. This is where the backbeats meet the spirits. So cheers, Jim. Man, hey, rock
Thank you,
on.
brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah.